Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard. I went from being a lawyer and partner at one of the largest firms in America to becoming an online personality and successful entrepreneur. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your health and personal life. So, how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you chase joy while achieving success? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back to another episode of Hustle and Flow. I am your host, Heather Hubbard, and we are back with part 2 of a 4-part series. This is episode 178, Banishing Burnout. Now, if you listened to the prior episode, you heard me share how this series came about. The intro to the podcast is Shine Bright Without Burning Out. And last week was the Shine Bright, and this week is the Without Burning Out. The future episodes are related to another part of the introduction, but you'll want to stick around because it's really taking a holistic view to how we want to best take care of ourselves individually, collectively, as we move about this interesting year of 2024. All right. If you listened last week, you already know I am giving away free worksheets with every single episode. So if you've already signed up for last week's, you're good. You don't have to do anything else. You're going to continue to get the newsletter. You'll continue to get the emails, which includes the link for every worksheet. If you're listening for the first time, or maybe you listened to last week, but you didn't get the worksheet, and now you're like, I really need that worksheet. You don't have to keep signing up, and you'll still get access to what happened before. So if you go to heatherjoyhubbard.com/subscribe, and we'll put that in the show notes as well, that link. If you go there now and you sign up, not only will you get access to today's worksheet, but you'll also get the one from last week. So it's kind of an all-in-one thing. So go ahead and sign up for that, and you will get access to them all. So today is all about banishing burnout, which in my mind is the flow. It is the flow of hustle and flow. It's interesting because when I started in my career, I was all about the hustle. And I achieved a lot of success with hustle. We talk bad about hustle. I even talk bad about hustle, but it's when it's hustle 100%. Hustle can get you great rewards, though. And I do think in this TikTok influencer era, sometimes we think you don't have to work hard to get things. But a lot of times people are working harder than it may seem. And it may not last if they're truly not working hard. I mean, I guess it could be a fluke, but again, I think a lot of people are actually working harder than they want you to see that they are. Um, it actually takes a lot of time, energy, and effort to come up with content and to make it look seamless. God bless them, doing their glam and having their size 0 bodies and having all the outfits and going to. I mean that it looks. I mean, maybe it doesn't actually look like fun to me. Maybe it looks like fun. Um, but that takes effort. It takes effort, and clearly to be able to then build a base takes effort. So I'm just saying, I'm not knocking them. They are actually working hard. But I think there's the perception that it's pretty easy. So hustling, there's still a ton of value in hustle. And the one thing I didn't fully understand when I was younger is that if you only have hustle and there is no flow, not only are you going to burn out, but you are going to sell your soul. You are going to wake up one day and say, what am I doing? What did I do all of that for? And that's why we want to make sure that we are satisfied, that we are healthy, and that we are joyful. That's part of what we're going to do next week is the joy. I used to think that flow was joy. And I have learned that's not true. Actually, it's not true. But that's fine. That's where I was in my stage of life. That was as much as I had learned. That was my wisdom. was that that was joy. I think partly because I had never experienced joy outside of, I don't want to, that's going to sound wrong. I was going to say outside of my career. That's not true, right? Like, but it was such a huge part of it that without it, I didn't have joy. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. I shared a little bit about that in my comeback episode, but that's for another episode. Today, though, and it's coming next week. But today, though, I really want to talk about the burnout piece and the flow piece because it's also a critical piece. Um, I think it's really hard to have hustle and it's really hard to have joy if you are not experiencing the flow. I think the joy is kind of a combination of both the hustle and the flow and another piece. So I found it really interesting and sad and inspiring when Elmo from Sesame Street just posted on Twitter. I know it's X. I'm still calling it Twitter. Um, Posted saying, "Hey, how's everybody doing? Just checking in. How's everybody doing?" And we, like the whole world, we were like, "Elmo, we are not okay. We are not okay. We are struggling." And whew, we are. We are. And I know that, like I shared last week, so many of us are ready for something better. So many of us are doing our best to have a positive outlook. And yet, there's still a lot of really hard things that we're having to witness in the world. A lot of really hard things where we feel like we can't make a difference, where our voice doesn't matter. Um, it's difficult. It is difficult to be alive in this moment. There are so many things where it's easy to be alive in this moment, so many things to be grateful for. And I think it's perfectly okay and important for us to also acknowledge and admit that there's really some rough edges. And a lot of us are struggling in many different ways. And after the Elmo piece, it was interesting to me because after that, I thought I saw like a lot of companies and others coming out saying, like, check on others, check on your friends. But and that's good. That's good. I love it. But it also suggests that you don't need to be checked on. Like, I don't know. Maybe I misunderstood that. But I kind of felt like the concept of, check on your friends. They might be struggling. It's like, well, shit, what we're struggling too. Like, how are you not struggling? We're all struggling. Maybe, I mean, maybe some people aren't struggling. Um, but I feel like most people are struggling. And I think that's part of the problem. Used to, I think it was easier to check in on people when when things were going great and you had the capacity to do that. I feel like pre-COVID, maybe pre 2016. I don't know. I don't know if it was 2016 or 2020. But for the most part, you would have things happen, right? Like you would have things happen in your personal life. There would be something that comes up here and there. And so, as friends, as communities, as companies, you were able to more or less, I feel like, more easily hold space for those who were having a hard time because everybody wasn't having a hard time all at the same time together. When we collectively are having a hard time, and it's been going on for a while, right? Like it didn't just start. I mean, we all have our different stories. Um, but there's Taylor. That's my cat Taylor behind me. For those of you watching the video. We all have different stories, but we all have experienced the shutdowns together. We all experienced the political division together. We all experienced the economic crisis together, inflation. We have all experienced, the current global unrest. Like we've all experienced that to different degrees. It may have impacted us in different ways, but it did impact us. And on top of that, most of us also have some personal stuff, whether it's business, personal, like we've got that added on. Healthcare, aging parents, children with special needs, like there's just a lot. And it's been a lot, I think, for most of us for 4 years. 4 years. And so I think it's part of why we were all like, Elmo, we're not okay. And because Elmo, we're not okay, we don't have capacity to necessarily check on in our friends. Like, it doesn't mean that we don't want to be there for each other. It doesn't mean that we absolutely would not try to support a friend in need. And, and I have had so many different people over the years say to me when they found out I got sick, like, let me know how I can help. And I have let people know how they can help. And it's been crickets. And which can be hurtful, but also it's completely understandable because people have a hard time helping others when they need help themselves. And I think so many of us are in that position in different ways, and we just don't have the capacity. So, if there's not a lot of capacity to be checking in on each other when we all need to be checked in on, what do we do? What do we do? Oh my goodness. Okay. Obviously, I don't have all the answers, but I got some ideas. Um, and for me, it really is body, mind, and soul. I'm looking at my whiteboard. So some of these kind of overlap, but I've tried my best to kind of put them in a category. I like categories. Makes it easier for me to kind of think in my own mind. So the first is you can take care of your body. All right. So you can move your body. And I'm not saying like you got to exercise. If you've ever listened to me, you know how much I hate exercise. And I'm also going to tell you something that I really don't want to tell you. So I had to start exercising more because of the weight from the cortisol. The doctors wanted me to lose weight, and um, Susan Hyatt and I talked about this in prior podcast. I'll put that link in the show notes as well. I can't think of the number off of the top of my head, but I was like, what am I going to do? I hate exercise. And so I got lucky enough that a company came in, AKT, that they have dance. And I love to dance. It's kind of like Zumba, but I love to dance. But they also make you do other stuff like core and planks and arms and legs. And I'm like, why do we got to do that? I just want to dance. It's good for me. So I had been going like 3 to 5 times a week. And when I had my nose surgery in December, which I talked about on last week's episode, I couldn't exercise. I couldn't do that kind of exercise for 4 to 6 weeks. And then there was a snowstorm. So I ended up basically being off like 8 weeks. And when I started going back, I realized, and I actually realized a little bit before I started going back, it really negatively impacted my mood. As someone who said that exercise never makes me feel better, I have to admit I was wrong on that. I used to, but it's true. Like generally, like when I get done exercising, like I don't have those endorphins where I'm like, I feel so good now. I don't actually. I don't feel good afterwards. But apparently, if you work out consistently, it maybe builds up some good moods, some endorphins that are long lasting. And when you cut that out of your life again, it negatively impacts your mood. I hate to admit that. But the point is, you don't have to like do the hardcore exercising. You can stretch. I'm not even talking about yoga. Like, are you stretching your body? Are you just sitting in a chair all day? Like, how often do you move your body? Like, just stretch your arms. Yeah. Like, how often do you do that? Um, that is a great start. It could just be walking, and it can be a short walk, but I do think that moving, I'm like, I hate to say this, right? You hate to admit you're wrong. I do think moving your body is so important for not only your body, but your mental health. I know that's what I was saying. Like, I've got little buckets for each, but they all really impact the other, right? It's a very holistic thing. But I do think one way that you can start to better take care of yourself is to make sure that you are moving your body in some kind of way. And if you can find a way to move your body that's also a lot of fun, like for me, it's dancing. For you, it might be something else. Um, that's a great way to get that movement in, even if you are like me and do not like traditional exercise. Another is sleep. How much sleep are you getting? And I know some people struggle to fall asleep, stay asleep, and sometimes that means that you need to test things. And a lot of people, right, like you've already tested a million things, but some of you haven't. I used to complain all the time about how I couldn't sleep through the night. And my doctor said, well, it might be your caffeine intake. And I'm like, oh no, I can drink a Diet Coke and go to sleep like that. And he was like, yeah, but it's probably keeping you from staying asleep. I'm like, that's dumb. Whatever. And he was like, test it out. And I will generally test anything out. I'll give it a try. And he had told me to cut it off at noon and see if it made a difference. And it did. Ugh. I'm admitting I was wrong on so many things on this podcast episode. Okay. Um, it did make a difference. And then what I learned as I kept testing is 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is really the marker for me. If I want a good night's sleep, don't I don't need caffeine after 10 a.m. I can fall asleep fine, but I don't stay asleep. And so that's something that you may want to test, and you got to give it a few weeks. Some of it may be related to, is your phone by your bed? Are you watching TV right before you go to bed? Are you on your phone right before you go to bed? Are you working right before you go to bed? Like, what are you doing before you go to bed? And the more you can experiment with it, the more you can test it out to just get curious and say, I wonder if there are ways I can get a better night's sleep. And you make it at the point where you can't, and maybe you need to go see a doctor, right? I think there's a lot of different options, but if you're not getting good sleep, if you're not getting enough sleep, um, I think that's a really important part of your body functioning in a way that also supports your mind. The other is food and drink and drugs. I know we don't want to talk about this. Um, Just get curious. Just get curious. Does putting certain foods in your body make you feel worse? And while we're on the topic of me admitting where I'm wrong, I have found, can't believe I'm admitting this, I have found that because I drink a glass of wine every night. Like, that's my thing. And I have found that when I don't do that, I actually feel better. Oh, ah, these are all the things that I've been having to test and learn over the last few years. I mean, obviously, I started this journey a lot earlier than that. But I really got a lesson in diving deep and upping all of these practices. And I don't feel as good when I drink wine every night. And so I'm drinking less wine. Same with food. Certain foods, they don't make me feel great. And it's not necessarily in that moment, but I can see the residual effect of how it impacts my mood um, the next day and the next day and the next day. Um, and then drugs, right? I'm not big into drugs because I'm too much of a control freak, but I know a lot of people do take drugs, right? We've got legal drugs now. And, I'm not going to, whatever you're doing, but I think a lot of times with food and alcohol and drugs, And food, a lot of times it's sugar, right? With those things, we can use it as a way to numb out. We can use it as a way to make us feel better, but it's only making us feel better in that moment. Long term, it's actually making us feel worse. And so these are just options. Everything is an option. Everything is something you can play with. Everything is something you can test. These are not rules. It's not you have to do this in order to be in flow. You have to do this to banish burnout. No, I'm just giving you ideas and options and areas where you can test tweaking what happens to see what the results are. Because we don't have a lot of support right now, right? We don't have a lot of support right now. And so we've got to really double down on taking care of ourselves so that we not only have space for ourselves, right? But so that we can also start being able to check in on others so that we have the space to help others out as well. Um, that's body. Okay, mind. Mind. Um, I think therapy may be something that a lot of people need right now. And a lot of companies, a lot of insurance, they actually have the free wellness check-ins or the free like online telephone check-ins where you can get that support. I think a lot of times we don't know about it. We don't look at those benefits because we just use what we have locally. Um, but you can look into that. And maybe you've never had a therapist before. Maybe you had a therapist and you had a bad experience. An option to consider is, would it help me again right now? Knowing that it's not permanent, I don't have to stick with it, but I might find it really valuable. And so um, there is no shame. I have had so many different therapists over the years, and I like some better than others, but I have never regretted hiring a therapist to help me process or work through something. So know that that is a great option if you feel like you don't have anyone to talk to because everybody's stressing out. That is their job. And they professionally know how to take boundaries, so you don't have to caretake for them. Another might be medication. I feel like we live in a country where everyone is overly medicated. And so I don't take that. When I say that, I fully understand the ramifications, but I also know that there can be stigma around it. And I think there's a lot of stigma around it, especially in some like spiritual communities or high achieving communities. And I just think that that is an option. It is a tool and it may be very valuable for you. I have been on medications where I found them helpful and not helpful. And again, it's just one more tool in your toolbox. And even if you need to be on meds, temporarily, it may not mean you have to be on them forever. Or you may find out, you know what, I actually do want to be on them forever. I just think it's important that we talk about all of our options and what is available, what is on the table. Um, Mindfulness. Y'all know I'm a huge fan of mindfulness. It saved my life when I was practicing law and had some personal issues that just came up, and I was struggling with a lot of things. And mindfulness really helped me have that perspective to create space where I could see things more clearly. Because when we are too close to something, we're not seeing reality. And generally, when we have that space, we realize things are not as big of a deal as we thought they were, um, that we can let them go because they don't really matter. Um, and it just gives us more personal peace. To me, that's really a lot of what flow is. It's about personal peace. And I think the more that we can individually have personal peace, that also creates, I think, some collective peace. I think, one of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of conflict right now in the United States, in wars, overseas, is that a lot of people are struggling. And a lot of people do not have personal peace at the moment. And when you don't have personal peace, you get angry and you get frustrated and you get resentful and you start to blame who's doing it and then you retaliate. And the more personal peace we have, I think the more national and global peace we have as well. So it is one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves. If you do not have a mindfulness practice, I highly encourage you to look into it. I mean, the beautiful thing about YouTube and Google is that there's just so much information at our fingertips. You can get started so easily. I've shared this before, but I'll share it again because maybe you don't remember it or haven't heard it. If you are more of like the cut and dry, skeptical corporate type, I highly encourage you to read the book Search Inside Yourself by an engineer at Google. I think you would like it. And if you are more spiritual, if you are more open, if you're not as judgmental with this stuff, then I encourage you to read Michael Singer's book, The Untethered Soul. A lot of people like The Power of Now as well. That one didn't resonate with me as much, but find what resonates with you. You can learn some practices. Like I said, there's so many different um, YouTubes that you can probably find, podcasts that it's just, there's also a lot of local meetups. Um, and I found a few in Nashville that are wonderful that I occasionally will go to just when I want some kind of practice. A lot of times there might be a Buddhist practice or a Zen practice, but you can find a practice that feels good for you and start to do that. Meditation is a wonderful tool. Um, Again, so many podcasts on that. There's so many different types of meditation. You don't have to try to block out all of the thoughts in your mind. You can do a guided meditation. But anything that focuses your mind and really slows things down can help you. I find painting to be a mindful practice for me. It's almost meditative I, because I don't think of anything. Like for hours, I'm in my own creative, imaginative world, and my brain gets to take a break. It's like a different part of the brain that's working. So, really finding ways to unplug. And I think digital detoxes are so important. If you are constantly looking at your phone, if you are constantly looking at some kind of social media, if you are constantly looking at the news, if you are constantly on your computer, if you are constantly watching TV, right? Like if you've got digital devices going all the time, not only is that going to bump up your anxiety because everything you're seeing is anxiety producing, it also is just keeping you on edge. And there's a ton of research out there on this, regardless of what it is that you're even seeing, even if it's something positive. When we are connected digitally, the way that they're set up intentionally is it's given us these little boosts. And so it's like this addiction. It'd be like sugar, right? And so it can feel good in the moment. And we have definitely created habits. 100%. We have habits around this. And so we may not even realize, oh, this makes me feel better, but it's become such a habit that we're constantly turning to it. You cannot hear your voice within. You cannot regulate your nervous system when you are constantly plugged in. And learning to stop some of that, testing what happens when you walk away from some of that. I I no longer do Facebook. I occasionally will go over there maybe once a month, once every few months. It drastically improved my mood. Drastically. And it may or may not do that for you, but test it out. The news, test it out. What happens when you are not plugged in all the time? Does it help you regulate your nervous system better? If so, take care of you. Take care of you. Okay. Last, your soul. Your gorgeous little soul. To me, your soul is all about honoring yourself and honoring the collective. And so I think part of that is having boundaries. Um, so many of us let anyone and everyone, or maybe not anyone and everyone, but certain someones have connectivity to us all the time, to have access to us all of the time. And being able to set really clear boundaries for ourselves so that we do not just have like the actual like physical space, but also like the mental space, the emotional space is really, really important right now. Um, if you don't ever like have true time to yourself where you are unplugged and you're not going to be bothered and you're not like trying to accomplish something or focus on something, you're going to have a hard time listening to the voice within. And so many of us, like, we're always looking outside of ourselves to get advice, to get wisdom, to figure out what is it that I do to fix this, when the answers are generally within us, but we're not quiet enough to hear them. And so a lot of our well being is amplified when we can learn to tune in to our higher wisdom. If you are a spiritual person or a religious person, that also means being able to tune into the higher wisdom of God, the cosmos, the universe, ancestors, whatever feels right for you. It's hard to hear that wisdom clearly when we are so on edge and so plugged in, and our bodies and our, like, we're not taking care of ourselves. It really runs us down. And so we have to create that space. We have to connect to, whether it is your higher self, your spirituality, your religion, whatever that is, being able to connect to that, getting back out in nature, reminding yourself that, there's a lot more than just us humans. And this earth, Lord, it's been through a lot, goes round and round, seasons, years. Was here before we were. It's going to be here after us. It just can give us a lot of clarity and perspective, as to our little minuscule part in all of it. And so, if we're going to avoid burnout this year, and it's a real thing, because like I said, Elmo, we've been doing this for 4 years, and we collectively are hurting. We are collectively grieving. We are collectively struggling. And so I really encourage you to focus on really dedicating time and space to your personal peace this year. And like last week, I have questions for you. I got a worksheet for you to really just reflect and consider what might impact whether or not you're going to have the stamina and the resilience to deal with the hard times, and when you're going to have the stamina and the energy and the passion to move forward when the opportunities present themselves. So go to heatherjoyhubbard.com/subscribe. Make sure you're on the newsletter. That's how you'll get on the newsletter. And then you'll get all of the worksheets for this 4-part series in February. All right. That is part 2. I will be back next Tuesday with part 3. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, give the episode a like and leave a comment below so we can keep the conversation going. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a future episode or announcement. Listening on Apple, Spotify, or another podcast app, you can watch the video and join in the after-show conversation by visiting hustleandflowpodcast.com.